Hello and welcome back for another video on ARK Survival Ascended, and it's that time again where another ARK Additions creature has made its way into the base game. The Deinotherium is finally here. Towering over their mammoth cousins with their sheer size, strength and speed, the Deinotherium is the definition of herbivore power. In this video I'll be showing you everything you need to know about the new Deinotherium, what maps they spawn on, where they spawn, how to tame, and fully showcasing their abilities. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. The first important thing I wanted to mention is that if you are currently using the ARK Additions mod for the Deinotherium and have some tamed up that you want to keep, then you will most likely need to keep the mod installed, as the official Deinotherium that comes to ARK today will count as a completely different species. I'd also like to mention that Garuga, the mod developer of the ARK Additions creatures mod, does also typically implement a feature with the previous ARK Additions that came to the game, where when accessing the creatures radial menu, you'll have the option to convert the modded versions to vanilla versions, and vice versa. I'm pretty sure this was present with the Ceratosaurus, the Archelon, and the Deinosuchus, so hopefully we should see that feature soon with the Deinotherium. So the first thing you'll be wanting to know is of course where to find them. Well, there is currently only 6 official maps in ARK Survival Ascended, and they will spawn on a number of maps. And after performing many dino wipes on each map, while using Der Dino Finder mod, I have narrowed down the spawns. So spawning on the island, they are found around the jungles and grassland areas, and from my experience these are the most common spots that you will find them spawning. On the center map, they will also spawn around the jungles, dotted around the central main 3 jungles in the center. Not sure if I've mentioned the center enough, but you get the idea. On Scorched Earth, they seemingly spawn more frequently and will typically spawn in the flat open areas of the map and around the edges of the canyons, pretty much almost anywhere that isn't mountains or the dunes. On Extinction, they will only spawn in the Desert Dome, which is very nice because the modded version did not actually spawn in the Desert Dome and it spawned in the Wasteland, which is a great change. I did perform quite a few dino wipes on Astraeos, but I was struggling to find them a lot more on this map. I did however find quite a few in the highlighted area, around the open grasslands right above the coast. Moving on to recommended equipment. Of course, taming one of these bad boys is not going to be a simple task. They are very dangerous, and there are also many other dangers to look out for. So be sure to take all that standard equipment that you take with you whenever you go out exploring. Having any shield equipped could also be quite a good idea, as the taming is pretty fiddly, it can mess up sometimes, and it will save you from taking a couple of stomps to the face. Moving on to their preferred taming food, which is beer. Yes, that's right, beer. Kinda strange, right? But this is the only thing you can tame them with, so you'll be needing to get stocked up on that nice and early. And of course, the amount of beer you will need will depend on your taming rates. I usually just take 20 with me because that's what beer stacks into. Also, if you are unsure of how to make beer in this game, here's a quick tutorial. The beer barrel can be unlocked at level 36 and crafted from a smithy. Once placing down your water intake, you can either place down your beer barrels nearby, which will automatically irrigate them. Placing 40 thatch and 50 of any berry inside is the recipe for beer. One important thing to note is that it will take 6 real hours to make 1 beer liquid, which is quite a long time. I'm pretty sure it is much quicker when using single player settings, but I'm pretty certain that is how long it takes on official settings. So the more barrels you have, the more beer for you. The more the merrier, some might say. If you are stationed too far from a water source and your intake is too far away from your base, you can use water tanks to create a pipeline up to your barrel. It is so much easier to do in ASA with the wireless feature. Once your barrel has produced some beer liquid, you'll need an empty water jar to convert it to a beer jar. This can be done by simply transferring any empty water jar into your beer barrel, and voila! We have beer. And of course, don't forget to keep on top of refilling them with thatch and berries. So how do you tame one of these beasts? Well, just like any other ARK Additions creatures that came to the base game, it requires a unique taming method. Firstly, you will need to be a whopping level 95 to even think about taming one, so you probably would have stocked up on a lot of beer by that point. To tame one, it needs to be alone, and they do commonly spawn in herds, which can be a little bit of a problem at times, so you will need to kill off its mates to be able to tame the one you want. I usually just kill them off with a decent pump action shotty, which will do the job pretty quickly and swiftly. I always find it's good to have a quick flyer nearby in case it does aggro to you, so you can fly out a render to quickly de-aggro it and return back to taming it. With a good stack of beer in your final hotbar slot, you can approach it from the front. Once in range, it will begin to sniff you out with its trunk. It will then acknowledge you by facing directly at you. This means it's ready to get itself down the pub for a few pints, which will begin the taming process, or minigame shall we say. He will acknowledge you with a series of animations. There will be a few videos visual cues that you need to look out for. You'll be wanting it to have its ears sticking out like this. It will perform other animations too, like shaking its head, etc, etc. Once it has performed a series of free animations, you can run up underneath it, right up next to its trunk, and it will automatically take the beer out of your final hotbar slot. No need to press any feed button, which is kind of nice, because sometimes it's actually quite hard to find the prompt when passive taming creatures. Proceed to back away and rinse and repeat. If it has its ears back, just like so, or its trunk curled up to the side, just like this, then you don't want to approach. It basically means it doesn't want to be fed, so the best thing to do is not go near it at all. I have found that if you wait around when it's in this state, it will still get angry anyway. So yeah, definitely don't approach if its ears are pushed back, or its trunk curled off to the right or left side, because it will be the last thing you'll regret. So if it is performing any of those animations, it is best to back away so it loses interest in you, and then reapproach to begin the mind games again. So keep watching his movements and temperament. I'll usually look out for 2 animations, and when it's performing the 3rd animation, this is when I approach, and it usually times it right just as he finishes his animation and I'm right underneath his trunk, ready to hand out a round of beers. I'd like to say it works every time, but to be honest, it is probably one of the most tedious taming methods I've ever witnessed. Even after performing 3 successful animations, the ones you're looking for, the amount of times I've gone in for a feed and it's just stomped me down to Chinatown is unreal. So I got there in the end, but I did have to fly out of render to de-aggro it probably at least 8 times. Rinse and repeat until it is tamed. However, I have discovered a cheeky little tip when taming them. When going in for the feed, I always stare at his feet and try and position myself about this far away from him. And if he is ready to chow down a beer, he will either take it straight away, and if not, just gradually edge forward, and he normally goes for the beer instead of stomping. In this video, I did tame a level 150 on 1x taming rates, and I needed 13 beer jars to tame it. And just a few more things to mention: if it does aggro to you and you have to fly out to render, it will not lose any taming effectiveness. The same thing goes for if any creatures aggro to it and it has to fight them off, or even if you accidentally damage it yourself, which I did test out on this level 150 just before I fed it its last beer, and it did not lose any taming effectiveness at all, even after a shotgun blast to the ass. So we're all good to go on that front. Here are the stats of the perfect tamed level 150. As you can see, they're pretty tanky with a lot of health, decent stamina, pretty high weight, and they deal some hefty damage too. Once tamed, it can be saddled up at level 85. You will feel unstoppable when sat upon this beast of burden, with strong attacks across the board, able to dish out devastating attacks, including a regular stomp attack, which can also be aimed to the side for a directional and more powerful version of the stomp. Its alternate attack consists of a trunk swipe, dealing less knockback and slightly less damage than the directional stomp. It can harvest berries with the stomp attack, while strangely being able to harvest a carcass with its trunk swipe attack. It is a herbivore, by the way, but I guess it's kind of like the Ferrazino in that respect. It can also efficiently gather wood with the trunk swipe, where it will also have 75% weight reduction for any wood inside its inventory, and just like its mammoth cousins, the Deinotherium is also an exceptional support mount, having its own version of a trunk bellow buff, which can buff all nearby allied creatures in range. The type of buff depends on the sex of the Deinotherium itself. The male buff will give a 15% damage increase and boost stamina regeneration, while the female buff gives a 5% damage resistance buff and can stack up to 3 times, which means an additional 15% damage resistance if enough females use this buff. The Deinotherium will most definitely be a popular pick for large-scale battles, and potentially a new member to add to your army for boss fight battles, as it does enter boss fight arenas, which did surprise me, to be honest. It is definitely the largest creature that can go into a boss fight, but honestly, I'm not complaining. I'm all for herbivore power. Either way, having 1 male Deinotherium and at least 3 females is always going to be a force to be reckoned with. Pairing this with the UT Courage Roar is going to be a match made in heaven. The amount of damage output and damage resistance that your creatures will gain is going to be crazy with all the buffs combined. They do also receive herd buffs, which will go up to +4 in a herd of 5 or more Deinotheriums. Sadly, I'm not that great at math, so I don't know the exact numbers, but they will receive an extra percentage of attack damage and damage resistance per extra herd member. And if all that wasn't good enough, they also receive the full healing effect of Sweet Veggie Cakes to add to their array of offensive and defensive capabilities. And that is going to be the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if it was helpful in any way, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.